Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Yes. Once again, we have liftoff. I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Big Truth Podcast. And before I introduce my guest today, I got to give a big thank you and big shout out to the Rumblers Nation, the Rumblers Car Club. This episode is sponsored by them. A very, very, very generous donation today, and this will help finance the podcast for a few months here and pay for all the hosting and all that. The main patron didn't want me to say his name, but I will tell you he's from upstate New York, and his last name rhymes with Marley. And if you can figure it out from there if you know him. But again, big shout out and big thanks to the Rumblers for supporting the podcast. And with that, let me introduce my guest today, Matt Henson from the band Noise. What's up, Matt? How you doing, bud? Oh shit! That was my bad. I shut his mic off. Here we go. Let me rewind. I'm a fucking retard. Here we go. Matt, what's happening, bud?
Not a whole lot, brother. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It only took 16 episodes before I botched an intro, and like I said, I'm true to my word. I don't really edit this thing, so fucking I'm gonna leave my mistake in there so you guys can all laugh at me. But Noise is a fucking a force to be reckoned with in the oi and punk scene. So if you don't know them, before you even just hit pause right now and just Google them and listen to a bunch of records because they've been putting music out since 2010. So get familiar with some of their backlog, pay for some downloads or pay for some actual vinyl or some CDs and some merch, and then hit play again, and so you'll understand Matt a little bit better before you even go further. But I'm sure most of the people that listening to this are already familiar with you guys because you guys have become steadfast, like I said, a household name in the oi and punk scenes, man, and hardcore too. It's because it's all a big crossover, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And for anybody that actually did pause and play our music, I apologize in advance, or after the fact, rather. Sorry you had to hear that. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate it. And yeah, we've been doing this for a little bit, with intermittent breaks due to my job. But it's been pretty amazing. A lot of fun doing this for as long as we have at this point.
Sure, man, and we'll definitely get into the story of the band because I'm sure it's with a 10-year history. I'm sure there's a lot there to talk about that people would find interesting. And just so you know, we obviously we're doing this over the phone. Matt's in El Paso, and we're not. I don't got the funds to be jet setting around or to fly people in yet. Sooner or later we will, so we can do all these face to face.
Any minute now. You'll be able to have your own cryogenic freeze chamber and a jet.
Yeah, absolutely. I just need a couple more car clubs to donate as much as the Rumblers did, and I'll be all right. No, I'm just playing.
I think Elon Musk has a car club. He's only got one, and it's in space. But as soon as he gets it back, maybe he can donate.
Yeah, maybe I can be the first podcast to have SpaceX as a sponsor, and then
perfect.
And then, what I got to do is make this podcast have enough kind of weight behind it where I could petition Elon to be the first podcaster to broadcast, to do a podcast live from outside of the Earth's atmosphere. That's a goal, right? We'll push for that. So everyone share this podcast and do it. You can leave a review or something and spread it out in your social network so we can make that happen. And hit Elon up and tell him you want Truth to go in space on one of those SpaceX civilian flights, so we can do a podcast live from out there.
Yeah, do it after he's been on Joe Rogan because he'll probably be in a way better mood.
Yeah, he's done that one a couple times, so I'm sure Joe would be the guy to get tapped for that. Obviously he has a much larger audience and
for now,
yeah.
For now he does.
Well, I don't think there's as many people into like punk rock and motorcycles as there are into like as into UFC and comedy. So, but it is what it is.
I think we like it that way.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like I cater to the crowd of people that I hang out with, and if it gets any legs beyond that, although I do got some guests coming up that are outside of those scenes, or it might be somewhat involved in like punk and stuff, but are also involved in some other weird stuff that we're going to start getting into too, just as an aside and some foreshadowing. So, but that's neither here nor there. So, Matt, tell me a little bit about your history, man. Like what before we even get into the band and stuff, I'm always interested in hearing what got people into like punk or hardcore or oi or you know, whatever subcultures that we're all into. Like, how did you find your way into that?
So I grew up in Atlanta, and I was before I discovered like punk rock. I was really into hip hop because that's. I went to a school in Atlanta, and I played basketball, and some of my teammates turned me on to Tribe Called Quest. This is right as like Outkast was starting to blow up in Atlanta, and I just really loved it. I loved the fact that it was, you know, there was something that resonated with me about people really just kind of speaking about their environment and looking at, you know, their surroundings and making music about it. And I think that's kind of, I've always thought that was kind of a parallel between hip hop and punk, was that it's a bunch of people that are looking objectively at what's going on around them and, you know, either protesting about it or, you know, trying to identify things that need to be changed or, you know, things that are going well. And so a kid that I lived a few doors down from introduced me to Minor Threat when I was 14. And it just, the very first song that I heard by Minor Threat was Stepping Stone. And it was weird. It was like when I was a really little kid, I used to watch the Monkees. And this was like when I was 7 years old, and that show actually was still a thing that people knew about. But I immediately recognized this song, and I was like, this is, it kind of tied two different worlds together. So, you know, this may sound weird, but it sounded as though like it was something that resonated with the kid me and the teenage I'm pissed off at everything and, you know, hate everything me. And it kind of tied those two together, combined with the fact that Minor Threat was, you know, speaking about things that they saw in society that they were, you know, clearly not content with or wanted to change or wanted to maintain. So to me, it was just a really big revelation of what you could do with music, because I grew up with, you know, traditional rock and roll and Motown, which is phenomenal for what it is, but it didn't have the angst behind it or the social wherewithal behind it in most cases. Not as direct anyway, because, you know, the social implications of like rock and roll, I was too young to understand. So, you know, Rolling Stones saying, "Please allow me to introduce myself." I had no idea what it was about the devil. I had no idea. Because I was a kid. So punk rock was a much more straight ahead. This is what's wrong, and this is, you know, what we think is wrong. So that's kind of how I got into it. But yeah, here we are.
So the takeaway is that you're probably the only dude to get into punk rock through the Monkees.
Yeah, and I think that's a great illustration of who I am as a person,
dude.
Watching the. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I remember that, dude. When I was a kid, I remember being a kid, probably about the same age, and being at my grandmother's house, and the reruns of that and Banana Splits would come on, and I was watching that shit for sure.
Yeah, I watched it on TV, and then there's Fox 97 was the oldies channel in Atlanta, and that's all my mom listened to. So you know, the Monkees and everybody else from the 60s and 70s. But when I heard Minor Threat cover it, I was like, wait, I know this song somehow. Yeah. And that's it's a weird way to get into it. But yeah, after that, I started discovering other bands, and it snowballed from there.
Sure. We're in Atlanta where I lived there for 1 year in '98. I was working at Centers for Disease Control, and I lived in Decatur representing North Druid Hills.
That's so my best friend in the world, his wife actually works at the CDC, but I grew up in Marietta, which is about maybe 30, 40 minutes outside of Atlanta. But when I first started going to shows, I was at most of them were at the Masquerade, in around 93, maybe 94. And that's kind of how I got into it. That's the scene I grew up in. And, I joined the Army years after that and kind of got sucked out of it as far as going to shows. But when I got stationed in JBLM in Washington, that's kind of when I was fortunate enough to be able to get back into music. And that's, where noise started.
Yeah, man. And then, one of the things that I remember about Atlanta that I really liked was that area, Little Five Points.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that, there was a bar there, the Vortex, where it was like a big skull face, and you walk through, to get into the bar, you had to walk through like basically a skull's mouth or something. I just kind of have a vague memory of that.
Absolutely. So the Vortex is still there, still has the skull. My best friend worked at Junkman's Daughter, which is right down the street, and then across the street.
Which Junkman's Daughter was like a Walmart for like punk rock shit. Like that's all I remember. It was like Walmart size, but it was like such weird shit. It was like punk rock stuff, but also just like wacky like gag gifts and crazy stuff like that. There needs to be more places like that. That place is still there, Junkman's Daughter.
It is still there. It's changed quite a bit. I was there. Unfortunately, my father got sick a couple years ago, and I had to make a few trips to Atlanta. But I always tried to go to Junkman's Daughter just to reminisce. And it's changed quite a bit. But the Vortex is still there. Their food is still amazing. My best friend and I got our first tattoo across the street at Sacred Heart.
Okay.
Mart from the Anti-Heroes used to work at Tornado, which was directly behind Junkman's Daughter. So we would hang out at Tornado when we were kids. The Point used to have hardcore matinees, which is like 4 or 5 doors down from Junkman's Daughter on Moreland. Yeah, it was such an amazing place to grow up, and I'm sure every city kind of has their story as to why their scene was either great or horrible. But Atlanta, man, in the 90s is absolutely amazing. It's such a fun place to grow up.
Yeah, and like I said, I was only there for a year in like '98, and I went to a lot of things, and actually. One of my friends was this kid Chris, and he was in that Frank 151. He was doing that Frank 151 magazine, and his roommate was this guy DJ Lord, who was like a big DJ, and actually became Terminator X's replacement for Public Enemy. And so we'd hang out at his apartment all the time, and all the guys from Public Enemy would just come through. Like, Professor Griff was always there. It was just very fucking bizarre place. Atlanta's a really bizarre place because there was also that club, like, what was it, 112? And that's where like all like Too Short and all them dudes hung out at. And like you drive by it, and this club was like in a strip mall, but it was like the Players Club. Like it looked like the pimps like ballroom, dude. Like you'd see all these like purple Cadillacs and dudes in furs and stuff, and it's like fucking 98 degrees and 100% humidity and fucking bizarre place. And there was a Tower Records there too. Or no, it was like a Whole Foods, and then. I just remember Atlanta was like weird because it was like there was like people like like you said, like Outkast, and they were getting huge, and I would just run into them dudes just like at like Whole Foods and stuff all the time, and everyone's like super nice out there. It's really bizarre, and I literally plowed into Erykah Badu at the Tower Records. She was like behind me, and I turned around quick, and I didn't know she was right there, and I just like smashed right into her like a bull in a china shop, and but she was very nice and gracious, and it was pretty fucking funny. But yeah, Atlanta's a weird place, man. And then there's like 4,000 streets all named Peachtree. That's like the big joke.
Yeah, there's every variation of Peachtree that you can possibly, like Peachtree Street, Peachtree Avenue, Peachtree,
Lane
Road,
Terrace
Peachtree
Drive, yeah.
Lane, Peachtree Terrace, Peachtree Cobblestone Thoroughfare.
yeah.
Everything's named Peachtree, and it's hard to get around. But yeah, man, Atlanta's the quintessential melting pot of all demographics.
Yeah.
And it always has been.
Yeah. And I just find that, generally people were it was like, it was oppressively hot, and there was a lot of fucking, I remember I had a black car at the time, and I'd come out and it'd be green with the pollen, but outside of the weather, like people were real cool down there. I never had any issues down there. It was fun. It was a good time. Yeah, man, I don't know. I miss it. It was a good time. I don't miss it in July, but like in January, it's a good place to be for sure.
It is. In the fall and in the spring, Atlanta's amazing. In the summer,
Yeah. I
As long
take
as you're inside, you're good.
Yeah, yeah, and everyone's got air conditioning and whatnot. But yeah, man. So you left Atlanta and you went in the military, and then you went out to Washington, and that's where you got back into music, and that's where Noise was formed. What happened there? Like, what was the how did I know we were talking a little bit earlier, but what's the story behind Noise and how that formed? And what year was that when you got over to when you got stationed in Washington?
So I was stationed in Washington in 2006. I left the 82nd Airborne Division and went to a unit in at the time it was Fort Lewis, Washington, which is right outside Tacoma. But I was getting tattooed at a place called Tsunami, and then I met some guys at a Sick of It All show who had a band, and I joined that band, and we did some stuff for a couple of years, and almost 18 months. It really wasn't even 2 years, but there was a guy who worked at the tattoo shop that ended up being Nate, and he wasn't my artist, but he was. We very quickly established that both of us listened to the same kind of music, liked the same kind of stuff, grew up in the same kind of scene. Nate's a New England guy, that by way of San Francisco, and I gave him a CD of the band that I was in at the time, very proudly, by the way, which in hindsight was something I probably shouldn't have done because we were really bad. But he picked up on it. He liked it. And he approached me about, he was getting some guys together to try and start a band. And around that same time, I was kicked out of the band that I was in because, I was in the Army and I couldn't tour regularly, and that's something they wanted to do. So I was thrown out of that band, and we started Noise. And all we really were looking to do is, we had a few songs, and we just wanted to kind of get it out, make a record, not necessarily for anybody other than ourselves, really. We just wanted to get down what we had, so that, we could look back and say, hey, this is something that we made, and these are the songs that we were proud of at the time, and we were able to get it on a piece of vinyl. So we went to it was in the middle of a forest, rural Washington, with this cabin with just a phenomenal studio inside of it, and that's where we recorded "Walk Beside Us," which was our first 7-inch. And for whatever reason, it resonated with a few people, and from there we were able to do more stuff and just really enjoyed everything that we were doing. So it was definitely something that we wanted to continue to do, and for whatever reason, man, we were able to continue doing it, and we're still doing it 10 years later.
Awesome, man. And I know with I know I'm I got a lot of friends that are in bands, and in bands that all started, like, I got a lot of friends from bands that are from Boston or from New York or whatever. And then, as we get older and whatnot, people kind of spread around. And it's always amazing to me that people can keep bands together, even though everyone lives in different places. Like, Street Dogs, for instance, like, dudes are in Texas, they're in California, they're in Massachusetts, they're all over. How do you guys kind of manage that with you being in Texas? And is everyone else still in Washington, or is anyone else all over the place, or?
So everybody else is still in Washington. And the biggest challenge that Noise has had is my job. So it takes a tremendous amount of time management and planning for us to be able to put out records and for us to play shows. And that's why we don't, it's ironic. I was thrown out of my first band because we couldn't tour regularly, but Noise has done more, we've been able to go more places than, we ever thought would be possible in my first band. And we owe that to the people that are gracious enough to facilitate that. But what I always look at with Noise is that I have 3 main priorities in my life: my family, the Army, and Noise. Because music is such an important part, of what I do. But the trick is trying to balance all of that. And the bigger trick is to make sure that you don't do any of that half-ass and that you prioritize so that like your main priorities are being taken care of and nothing takes a back seat. So if I identify that, Army is going to be super busy this year, noise has to take a back seat because my family has to be brought up to the point where I can spend as much time with them as humanly possible. But we've been lucky in as much as I'm able to look at my schedule, and I've had, commanders that are super supportive, a couple guys that are super into punk rock, and say, hey, we have this training coming up. In the 4-day following that, I'm thinking about being able to play like, Boston or New York or wherever. Is that okay? And so what Noise has to do is we take 4-day weekends and we get out, play a couple shows, come back home, and everybody goes back to work because all of us have 9-to-5 jobs, just like, most punk bands do.
Yeah.
But, it's a delicate balance of being able to make sure that you fulfill your obligations because all of us have families also. And that's the number one obligation is you make sure your family's taken care of. And, this music doesn't pay the bills, not for us anyway.
Sure.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's hard to be a punk band that's like a sustaining punk band unless you can tour like 9 months out of the year and sell merch on the road and all that,
Exactly. And, even beyond that, my wife and kids, go without me being around a lot because of what I do for a living. So the question is always, is this band trip, is it something that, is kind of congruent with maintaining my obligations as a husband and a father? Have I been around long enough to justify going out and drinking beer with my buddies for 2 days while we, go and play music, which we all absolutely love. But face it, man, doing what I do for a living, when you go on a band trip, it's a vacation,
Sure.
Like or not. It's a vacation where you're not going to get any sleep because you're going to be going all kinds of different places all the time. And, load in is whenever, and then you're leaving the venue at 3 a.m, getting 3 hours of sleep and then taking a flight. But that's a vacation.
Yeah.
So that's really been the biggest challenge, man. It's just balancing my job and my family and Noise and really trying to do all of it as wholeheartedly and as effectively and all in as humanly possible. And sometimes things have to take a back seat, and that's always going to be the music. It's never going to be my family or the Army.
Sure. And that's one thing that I think is interesting and talking to a lot of guys and stuff, like there's a lot of people that I know that have been in, these music scenes for a long time and they're still here and they're still in bands and they're still doing stuff. And it's one thing to be in a band when you're 18 years old and you got nothing going on, like, and no serious job, and you can go for weeks at a time on the road and not make anything, and it's fine. It's another to be, like you said, like, having a career and having a family and then still trying to balance this. But to me, it's kind of shows what it means to someone or how much this music and the subculture means to somebody when it's not maybe the main priority, but it's still enough of a priority where you try and squeeze it in wherever you can, because it isn't a lot of payoff monetarily to do this stuff, but it what is the thing that drives you to keep doing this, even though, like you said, it isn't like a thing that pays your bills? Like, what do you think at this age and having been doing it this long, what do you think still keeps you going and doing this?
I think playing a show and watching a kid absolutely sing their heart out to something that you wrote in a bedroom on an acoustic guitar, thinking that nobody would ever hear it or care about it. Getting a message from somebody that said, "Hey man, I've had a really bad year and your music has really helped me get through it." That's what the payoff is for all of this. Getting to meet your heroes musically and getting to play music with them and call them buddies. I was a huge Street Dogs fan before I ever knew any of those guys. I never thought I'd get to play music with Street Dogs or do a split with the Street Dogs. I never thought that would happen. I never, the things that we've gotten to do with this band, if you had asked me when I was a teenager, because I always wanted to be in a band. I always wanted to play music. But I never thought I'd get to do it. And I never thought I'd get to do it in a capacity where I actually got to do the things that I've gotten to do with noise, and none of us did. And that's why anytime we get to do something, or we play a show, or we release a record, it's a humbling experience, because, you know, all the guys besides myself have been in, you know, either hardcore or punk bands. Kenny and Jesse have been in like at least 5 different hardcore bands out of Seattle and toured all over the place. And like you said, never made a dime, had to sleep in vans, you know, eat gas station food constantly. And then that's, you know, what it is. And, you know, it makes it all the more humbling that we get to do the things that we've gotten to do, with the people that we've gotten to do it with. And that's not something that's lost on us, but what keeps us going is just the resonance that takes place when you're playing. We played in Paris, and there's a song we have there's a very distinct guitar solo, and I couldn't hear the solo because the crowd was actually humming the guitar solo Jesse was playing so loud that it overshadowed his guitar. And that was really like the quintessential moment where I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Getting to do this is absolutely amazing. I'm in France, and there are people here that know every note to every song that we play, and it's incredible. So that's what really the drive is.
Sure. Cool. And what do you guys like? You know, I know you mentioned France and stuff. Have you done much touring outside of the States? Like, have you hit what are some of the countries you guys have hit, and what's been like one of your favorite places to play? You know, whether that's in the States or out.
We haven't gotten to do much outside of the country because it's such a logistical thing, especially with my job. We were supposed to play Spain, and then Kenny was selfish and had a child. But we did a very short European tour where we played 3 places in Germany, and then we played France, Switzerland, and Netherlands. I would have to say Venlo in Netherlands was one of our best shows. Paris, Hamburg, Berlin was amazing. And then in the States, man, there's so many different places. New York was amazing. Boston was amazing. Salt Lake City was actually one of the best shows I think we've ever played. That crowd was just, man, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just a really remarkable experience as a you know, band to just be able to play. We did that one with the Street Dogs and Get Dead. But it was just an amazing show. We've played so many amazing places. We did a brief, like, short tour in Texas years ago with our friends the Broadsiders from Dallas. And that was amazing. We played Houston at like 1:30 in the morning, and Johnny from Street Dogs opened up for us with his acoustic act.
Yep.
By the time we went on, everybody had either been thrown out for fighting or was so drunk that they didn't know where they were, which made it a really interesting set because we played really well. That was a great set. But I don't think anybody noticed, to be perfectly honest. So.
People watch the videos later and be like, "Oh man, that was a good set. I wish I was there," even though they were there.
I wish I was there when I took that video.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one thing. I don't know if it annoys you like it annoys me. And just not even being like, you know, because War Machine doesn't play a lot of shows, but like being in the crowd at a show now, and it's like everyone's got their hand in there with their fucking phone, and they're more concentrating on taking pictures and video. And yeah, I get taking a couple pictures or whatever, but you're videoing the whole show. Like, why don't you just watch the show? You know what I mean? Like, and remember it, because I don't know, like, no. And do people really go back and watch all this shit they're videotaping all the fucking time? Like,
I think it's more of a. I think it's a more of a. I have the ability to capture this moment rather than to live in it, and everybody's trying to figure out the balance between. Yeah, man, it's really important to capture this moment, but how frequently do you need to capture the moment, and how frequently do you need to actually just live in it and enjoy it? And I'm guilty of it myself.
Oh yeah.
But I think that my wife gives me shit all the time for it. But I do the, what's ironic is, my father did the exact same thing. But there was no, phones that were supported by a camera.
Yeah.
I got to bring out the Nikon every time we do anything.
Sure.
And, I was like, come on, Dad. I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
But later in
my
life,
dad's gone now.
But I'm sure you appreciate it.
I wish there were more. I wish there were more pictures. Nate talks about this all the time. Like, there are no pictures of him with his dad, and there are very few actually with me and my dad. And so if I have the opportunity to take a picture, and I do look at those constantly when I'm deployed or when I'm away on work. I look at pictures of my family and my kids because, it kind of eases some of the anxiety associated with being away from your family for a while. But at a show, I totally get just watch the show, because you're not going to, hey, remember the 38th minute of their set when they did a ring out note and then nobody, you don't care about that. Just watch the show.
Well, and there's two things. One, take a couple pictures, because a picture does capture the moment a lot of times, or way better. A picture matched or mated to memory captures the moment way better than watching your shitty little camera phone video that you probably were hammered and it's all wavy and the audio sucks and it's all shaky and your fucking drunk ass is like filming like fucking the back of someone's head and you don't even know it. Take a couple pictures and live the show or live the experience. And then when you go back later, you look at the picture, the experience comes up from inside you, and then you remember it and you're back in it. And
that's what pictures are for. That's why they were, that's what they do. Those pictures give you a, kind of a high watermark of where you were in that experience. You don't need a 45-minute video of an entire set to do, and if it's a noise set, Christ Jesus, man, you just wasted 45 minutes of your life. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Take a picture. Because are you really even enjoying it if you're trying to make sure that you don't get the hell knocked out of you by whoever is in because if it's a good show, people are going to be moving around.
Yeah.
And you're not going to effectively capture it. Plus, there's probably somebody that's actually shooting the set for the most part, that's on the stage and not getting messed with. So just enjoy the show. Yeah.
And then seek out the video, the professional or the better grade video than your crowd footage later. You know what I mean? And it's just probably
Google it.
Gonna be distracting too, looking into the crowd and you see all these phones and lights and fucking put your fist in the air, throw some beer around, dude. And that's what the band wants. They don't want to see the back of your fucking cell phone case. No one wants to see that.
No, man. If I do acoustic stuff every once in a while, that's what I expect is, the personification of just having your phone up and not doing anything, because that's what acoustic music yields, is a bunch of people standing there looking at you. And even if they're enjoying it, you have no idea, because they're going to do the same thing if they hate your guts. But when noise is playing, I would really prefer, move around and have fun, sing along. Don't make sure that you're being Eastman Kodak, trying to make sure that everything is succinctly done so that you can capture our 30-minute beer fueled set.
Yeah, man. So, what you just mentioned that you also do some acoustic stuff. What got you into doing that, and what kind of stuff are you doing?
I learned how to play guitar because I wanted to, sing because I've always loved music, and I was doing landscaping in a rural Georgia town when I was 15 years old. My dad worked there, and I got sent to live with my dad for a little bit, and I bought a guitar just to kind of teach myself, just for something to do, but also to teach myself how to play some chords and actually be able to accompany myself when I sang. And it kind of stuck, because everything that I've ever written, for the most part, I have written on an acoustic guitar, because I've learned that if you can write and play on an acoustic, it's way easier to play on an electric guitar, because I didn't pick up a bass until the band I was in just before Noise. So it's a song we have called Idle Action. I wrote it on an acoustic guitar. And what's always cool is writing these songs on an acoustic guitar and then picking up an electric and then showing it to the band and watching it grow legs and just kind of grow beyond anything I thought it could do. But because I have that history with an acoustic and I have a history with music that is not punk, I felt like I got stationed in Korea for a year away from my family. And while I was there, I had an acoustic guitar that actually our drummer Kenny's father gave me, because my acoustic guitar is a piece of shit. So I used that time to really dial in some of the stuff that I'd been, messing around with for a while. And we did an acoustic project called Stadium Way when I came home, and we recorded 4 songs with Kenny, who's actually a better guitar player than he is a drummer, and our friend Kevin from the Interrupters, who did organ and keys on that record. But I was really nervous about it because it's not something I'd ever recorded or ever done. And it is what it was. I was actually super happy with it. I'm glad I did it. My mom for sure was glad that I did it because she hates punk rock, but she likes my music. But yeah, man, it's just a different way of expressing some of the stuff that I had going on. And I love, I won't say I love playing acoustic because the shows terrify me and they're not fun the way that playing with noise is, because you just play and people sit there and kind of nod their head and you can't tell if they hate your guts or they really like it. So there's not that same intimacy and interaction with the crowd. And also it's terrifying because everybody can hear everything you do. So if you make a mistake, they're going to know.
Yeah. And there's not like a drunk wildness to it. So there's a little more accountability and things can be a little more glaring. Yeah.
No, it is, it's like the SAT test of music. Like if you make a mistake, they got acoustic music is the Scantron that will make sure everything is succinct and in line with what it's supposed to be. But it's just, there was some stuff I needed to say and I needed to express, and that's the venue I chose to do it. And, it turns out, it resonated with a lot of people. You can't tell it when I play it live, but, it's a fun thing. I've been doing some live streams, recently on Instagram just to kind of, keep people, either amused or, they can laugh at me or whatever case may be. But Pirates Press our label has been doing a whole lot of live streams from bands that are doing that in the interest of, kind of keeping people still engaged with the music that resonates with them, which I think is an awesome endeavor. But yeah, man, acoustic music is terrifying.
Sure.
It's terrifying.
That's such a good quote right there. Acoustic music is terrifying. But yeah, terrifying to play, I can imagine, man, because there's so much more focus on what's going on. And I know I've gone and seen like Johnny or Lenny do some shows that were acoustic, and I get nervous for the motherfuckers when they're going up there, and I'm like, damn, that's got to be some hard shit to fucking do, man, for sure.
Yeah. Because you can hear everything.
Yeah,
you can hear everything, and the hope, I think, as an acoustic artist is like, well, nobody's really listening to this. They're just trying to order their drink. But yeah, once you establish that, like, nope, these people are actually looking at me and they're going to hear if you screw something up. Yeah, you can't blame it on anything. You can't say, well, Jesse flubbed a note or Nate. It's just you. So. Yeah. There is no,
and you can't do
the buck when it's you and a microphone, man.
Yeah. You can't say fuck it. It's punk rock either.
yeah, who cares? No, man. You made the conscious decision to do acoustic music, knowing very well that like there's a certain standard that accompanies that, even if it's a horrible standard that means that your music is horrible. You still have to kind of know how to play. So for an amateur musician like myself, that was kind of maybe it was a dumb move, but whatever. That record came out pretty well.
What pushed you to do that? What did you want to say with that record that's different than the stuff that you want to say with Noise?
So Noise, all of Noise's stuff is pretty somber. It's more socially, it's more of a social commentary. Noise is. Stadium Way was a more intimate, I think, micro version of that, where there's my dad had just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I wrote a song called Shadows, and it's about basically mortality and how you recognize your own mortality, and what happens in the interim while you kind of contemplate your own mortality, how you spend that time. And that's pretty much what encompasses your lifetime is looking at like the end of the line, because you recognize when you see somebody that you love start to die, it really makes you cognizant of your own mortality and being aware of how you spend that time and the effect that it has on the people that you love. So I wrote that song, and I was like, dude, that's not really a Noise song. Noise does have a song about losing people that you love, but it's not as much of an intimate kind of deal, and that's kind of where I came from with Stadium Way, which is our acoustic deal. And there's social commentary also, but again, it's very intimate, and it's very like more how I feel personally, vices how the band feels, because Nate and I are pretty much on the same page with most things, but we both have different perspectives. And the message that we typically try and convey with Noise is, again, it's an objective view of society, but we do it in a much more aggressive way. Whereas Stadium Way, I just wanted to come at it from a different perspective, where it was more intimate, and I felt like an acoustic variation of that would be a better vehicle for that kind of music. Vices, trying to make it, forcing it to be punk rock.
Sure, man. And with Noise, one thing, I did want to follow up with it. Are all of you guys writing music? Are you primarily writing it, or is it you and Nate, or is it the whole band kind of contributing? How does the process work? And especially now with you being, in a different time zone than everybody else, like how does that work?
So I write a lot of it, and Nate writes some of it also. Jesse has actually written a few Noise songs, but the way that it really, the cool thing about the band is, like, even if I write a song or Nate writes a song, when we bring it to the band, it becomes almost instantly the band song. Because I'll have something in my head as far as like hooks for leads and, drum beats or whatever. And I can bring a song to the table and say, hey, this is kind of what I'm messing around with. And Jesse will mess with something and Kenny will mess with something. And I instantly like, yep, that's better than what I had in mind. So just do that.
Yeah.
It's really cool in that regard. Jesse runs a studio. He was our sound engineer before he was our guitar player. So that gives us a lot of, that's a huge asset to have as far as, what we're able to do, because the guys we can record practice. We can get, once we get a drum track down, Jesse and I can come in and just, do the bass and guitar whenever we want to, vocals whenever we want to. So we're really, really lucky in that respect. Jesse's recorded a lot of, so he's recorded Cool Keith and he's recorded UK Subs.
Okay.
That's kind of I'd say that's a really good illustration of his diversity as far as an engineer. But we're really blessed in that capacity, that we're able to like come in and, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We can record it really quick, and then if I have to go somewhere for work or whatever, the guys can come in and work on it while I'm gone.
Sure.
And that's what they've been doing. So the songs that Nate has been writing, again, with the time management, we knew that I was going to have to leave for a year to come here to Texas. So all the songs that I'd been kind of fiddling with, we made sure that we got down, really down pat, recorded them, and then we left bells and whistles that Jesse would add to, you can do that while I'm gone. While I'm gone, you guys focus on the things that Nate is writing. And that's what they're working on now. So again, it's a very delicate balance of like time management and the assets you have available. So
Sure.
The fact that Jesse has his own studio, we have the luxury of doing that, whereas a lot of bands don't.
Yeah.
And we recognize that, and we're very lucky.
So are you going to be able to do, like, I know you have some stuff already recorded, but if they come up with some new stuff and send it to you, do you got a studio out there you can go put vocal tracks on and then send it back and then they can mix and stuff like that?
Yes. So there's a studio here in El Paso. I'm actually going to head over there in the next couple of weeks and do some guest vocals for another band. But that's kind of the plan, is just,
Sure.
getting stuff down. If they accumulate enough stuff, man, I would really love to just go back to Tacoma and hang out with them and do it in our studio, just so I get to see them, because we were supposed to play punk rock bowling, and that was supposed to be our little vacation this year, which is obviously not going to happen. But yeah, it's just really, it's just a series of problem solving, which is fortunately what I get paid to do in the Army, is just solve problems. So
Cool.
The guys are very adept at that also. So
Yeah, man. And that was another thing I want to get into, and I don't know how much you can talk about it or not, but like, what led you into the Army, and what is it that you actually do? And is that something that's like, is this pretty much like your long range career plan? Like, you're going to retire from the Army, or you got other stuff that you kind of got going on?
So yeah, no, I joined the Army because I was at pretty much the bottom of my experience as a human being. I sucked as a civilian. Had some law issues, and I reached a point in my life where I had always thought that I was capable of things, and I always thought that I had something in me that I was able to maybe manifest into something that was productive, and utilize the things that I thought I was good at to do something productive. And I didn't do that shit. What I did instead was get arrested and run around with, dudes that, did stuff that was bad. I won't get into it, but, it basically manifested itself in me getting arrested and me having to make a choice like, hey, you gotta do something. And you can't do it on your own. Clearly, I didn't have the self-discipline or the wherewithal to actually govern myself like an adult. My dad was in the Army. His dad was in the Army, and I figured that was my chance. Like, do something like that and see where it took me. And I was going to do 3 years and get out and go to college, and instead I've been in for 20 years, and it saved my life, quite frankly. I got in and I realized I was good at it and I enjoyed it. It's definitely not without its challenges. For sure. I've spent a lot of time away from my family, but yeah, man, and what I do at this point is I basically, I take care of soldiers. My job is basically as a leader, is to look at junior soldiers, like guys that are just coming in, kids basically, because these kids are, 18, 19 years old, and using the things that I went through to resonate with them to make them better, not just as like a soldier, but as a human being. So that's kind of the point of doing all of this, is to be able to help other people. So, just as a father, I don't want my kids to make any of the mistakes that I've made. I don't want my soldiers to do any of that either, and there are varying degrees of success with that. Because, like me, my dad tried to do the same thing, but I knew more than him all the time, until I became an adult. And then I realized I didn't know anything. But, being a soldier, gave me a purpose, and it gave me discipline. It gave me, not in the corny sense of, the movies that people watch and, made me a man or whatever that is. But it did give me a sense of pride and a sense of purpose. And I realized that all of the things that I thought that I might be good at, that I actually was. I just needed a vehicle to do that in a manner that was consistent with, who I was as a person. It just resonated with me. So that's how I got from, A to B. And really what I try and do is just use the tough times that I had and the hard experiences that all self-inflicted, that, I put on myself, making sure that my kids and making sure that my soldiers don't have to deal with any of that. And again, it's hit or miss.
Sure.
Because if they're like me, they don't care.
Yeah.
But, every once in a while, you reach somebody, and that's a really big, big moment for a leader, is to, be able to look at somebody that's having a hard time, and then you tell them your story, and then you give them the means with which to get out of that situation and to be successful, and they do it. That's a huge moment for, I think, anybody,
Sure.
whether it's a leader or a father. But yeah, the Army gives me the opportunity to do that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then sometimes as a leader, you got to recognize they might not take that lesson now, but somewhere down the road it might resonate, and then whether you see them or not, they'll take that in, and it will help them. It just might not. They might not be ready for it right now, but something down
Absolutely.
the road.
Same thing with being a father, man. You take care of your kids whether they want to be taken care of or not.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between what you want and what you need. And if I recognize that it's in someone's best interest to do something, they may not agree with it. Ferris has wanted chocolate cake. My daughter has wanted chocolate cake all day long, because we have chocolate cake. No, because we have chocolate cake on the top of the refrigerator, and so she's wanted it. But it's not in her best interest to eat chocolate cake all day. So I've been the bad guy for the better part of the day. The bigger picture of that is, as a leader, people aren't going to understand what is best for them in the context of, a vocation, right? But, in your job, you've been doing it a while. Somebody comes in and they're new, they may not understand exactly what, equates to being good at that job, or what you need to do to be proficient at that job, because what the steps in between may not be very palatable. Doing a whole lot of, physical training, doesn't resonate with a whole lot of people. Not a whole lot of people want to do that. They don't want to sweat. They don't want to, be uncomfortable. But if putting them in that position makes them better at what they do, then that's your job. Yeah. So you may not be popular, but you'll be a good leader. And, that's kind of what it is. Taking care of people, whether they want to be taken care of or not.
Yeah, yeah. And half of you, sometimes when people don't want to do that shit, you must be like, dude, this is what you signed up for, motherfucker. You're not in the fucking, you know what I mean? You're in the fucking Army, dude. You're not in the fucking, whatever, like, this is what you signed up for.
You'd be surprised. But again, man, as a leader, like, you can't negate somebody's experience because my job is to make you the best soldier that you can possibly be, right? Yes. I will turn the water on. Your job is to get that out of them, right? Yeah. They're not initially going to be like, yeah, I'm good at all this stuff. Maybe a few of them will be. But there are some of them, like myself, that didn't know that they were good at that until somebody, used a forcing function to get that out of them. So, like, yeah, your natural instinct, and it has been many times for me, is like, dude, this is the Army, right? Like, your recruiter told you that you'd have to, like, wear uniforms and jump around and run and stuff, shoot guns. But if you do that, if you try and negate their experience because of your own, you're going to lose resonance with them, especially with, like, millennials being in the Army. And I don't use that term as, like, derogatory. That's just where we're at. That's the generation that's coming in. If you no matter how hardcore you are, no matter how, much shit you've been through, if you start off with that, like, what I've been through X, Y, and Z, and I've been through Afghanistan, Iraq, they don't care. Like, their perspective is still the same. So if you start off with that and say, hey, your perspective is completely bullshit because of everything that I've gone through. Well, you've just they're going to say, okay, boomer, and turn you off and keep doing exactly what they're doing, because that would have quantified the fact that you don't resonate with them and you're out of touch, and they may be completely wrong, and they are, but at the same time, your job as a leader is to facilitate the best performance out of them. You can't do that if you immediately remove yourself from any sort of resonance with your audience. And in this context, it would be your soldiers or your employees or whatever. But like this whole thing with like millennials being entitled and everything else, you know what, that may be, and that may be your perspective, but bottom line is they're going to be changing our diapers when we're at the old folks home, if we're lucky enough to get there. So we probably ought to teach them some shit.
Yeah. Dude, I get it too. And like we have a shop hand here, apprentice, and he's 17. He's in high school his senior year, and he's actually going to be going into the Air Force. And it's like, I'm so stoked that there's actually a young dude into like motorcycles, and you know what I mean, and like choppers and custom bikes and stuff. And he comes in and helps whenever he can, but he's still in school and working and whatnot. But you don't see it as much. Like I and I'm not going to, it's not getting into like all these fucking kids, blah, blah, blah. But it seems like I can kind of see what you have to work with, man, because it is a different world. And like, it seems like the generation of people that are in there, like whatever, like teens and early 20s now is like vastly different from like, from when I was a kid. But, our parents said the same thing. So is that just the natural order of things? And where's it going? It's just a bizarre thing, man.
Without exception, it's the progression of society. So literally every generation, like you think of your grandparents, how squared away they were. Like I don't know that my grandfather ever didn't wear slacks. I feel like maybe he, like right out of the hospital, they're like, hey, here's your kid's slacks, and he has to wear these for the rest of his life. I've never seen the man, like, he died in 2013. I've never seen him not wear slacks and a collared shirt, buttoned, like, I guarantee you his grandfather, who fought in the Civil War, was like, these kids,
yeah,
they're out here not, whatever.
With their jazz music.
Yeah. Listen to their crazy jazz music. Exactly. So the 20s generation, and that was so far-fetched for the generation prior to that.
Yeah.
It was, these kids are drinking and dancing and enjoying music and trying to have fun with their life instead of, just start dying as soon as they're 18 years old. Like, my dad talked about how, the drill sergeants were, he was in the Vietnam era, and they were like, this is so easy. When I went through basic training, it was way harder. I went to airborne school in 2000. My grandfather went in 1940, just before Normandy. He jumped into Normandy. But I think that airborne school, when he went through, was a little bit harder than how it was when I went through. And there's a show called Band of Brothers that kind of encapsulates that. But the point is, like, every generation is, softer than the generation before. And it's cool to joke about that because it is funny.
But they all live longer, you know what I mean? Like the new generation seems to live longer.
but the thing is, man, we have to embrace the fact that this generation is different than we are, and learn how to speak to them, to take care of them, because they're going to be the parents of our grandchildren.
Yeah.
So regardless of how we feel about this generation, we have to find a way to speak to them in a language that resonates with them and get them to understand. Because if you come at them with the grandpa and my day, we didn't have hot food, they don't give a shit about that. So you're immediately going to negate anything that you have to say. So, as a leader in the Army and as a father, my son talks to me about Fortnite. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I could chalk it up to like, that's, in my day we had Super Mario and we were happy. Yeah, that's cool, but he didn't care about that. So your ability to like converse and communicate with like, people that are outside of your, area of comfortability as far as like, being an adult. And a lot of times I sound exactly like my dad. That's usually when I'm like, oh, I probably got to pull it back. But yeah, man, like it's easy to make fun of millennials and be like, they're soft and entitled and they glued to their phones all the time. But there were equal complaints that our parents had with our generation. Like, it was video games were violent and music was violent.
Yeah.
It's making us kill people. And, so I think your ability to like kind of balance that whole, like, yeah, it is funny. And you guys are entitled, but at the same time, I need you to run the old folks home that I'll be in
Yep.
a few decades. So
Yes.
I'm going to teach you some stuff in a manner that you can actually figure this out.
Yeah. Now, I someone was saying this today, and I don't know, because we were talking about, like, I have Adam here, and he's going to be going into the Air Force, and someone was saying, and I don't know if this is true or not, but this would sum up the whole millennial thing. And is there like a thing like a yellow card or something now in basic training where you could take like a mental health day? Is that true, or is that just bullshit?
So I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know.
Okay.
At this point, because I have not been dialed into basic training for a while.
Yeah.
And I can't speak to any measures that they have in place. It's taken everything I have to be like in my day.
Yeah, no, I know. This is a safe place to do the in my day. I don't know if I have many millennial listeners, so we're not going to alienate. You're not going to alienate anybody here.
No, it's not even that. I don't want to speak out of turn.
Sure, I get it.
I think, there are definitely measures that are put in place to facilitate a new generation going through basic training, and I can't speak to any Air Force stuff whatsoever because I have no experience with that. But I think that it is easier now than it was for me, but I say that in the context where, my perspective was my perspective. And I say, like, if I knew then what I know now, everything's easier now than it was when I was a kid because I know more now. I know how to navigate that better. So like, it's silly for me to like kind of.
Yeah, no. I was just wondering. Yeah,
I think there may be something where they can kind of take a timeout, but I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
I can say definitively, I wish they had it when I was around. However, I wouldn't have used it because my drill sergeant was my idol.
Yeah.
He was an old 82nd Airborne Division dude. Found out very quickly that I was going to the 82nd Airborne Division after airborne school, and I became his protege / if you screw this up, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
Dude. So he's like my basic training father.
Yeah. It wasn't a position of privilege. It was just a position of more accountability for you probably, right?
Yeah. So like I went through a gas chamber with strep throat because I was scared to tell anybody that I had strep throat. Not because I was scared there would be reprisal. I just didn't want to disappoint my drill sergeant. I don't know if you've ever been through a gas chamber, but it sucks. And doing it with strep throat sucks way more.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then I didn't want to, piss my drill sergeants off. And I also didn't want to, go to stick hall and be like put on quarters, which is our version of like, you have to stay home for a few days. I didn't want to do that because I was scared that I wouldn't get to graduate with my class. So for decades, I have been towing the line between hard and stupid. And with different degrees of success. A lot of times it's more the stupid than the hard.
Yeah. The only thing that not the only thing, but, and this isn't to get this we can, after this we can get on to whatever else, but the only thing I worry about with the younger generation is the lack of like wanderlust and like exploration and like adventure. And I say that in that from what I see, even like, it seems like people are more tied in digitally than they are into just going out and seeing the world and doing things. Like I remember when I was like, and I know it was different times and I'm not doing when I was a kid, but I remember, when I was a kid, we'd ride our bicycles everywhere and just whatever, what I mean? And go in the woods all fucking day or ride around the city all day, get into shit, fucking just be home when you're supposed to be home. Your parents, no one was over your back and watching you 24 hours a day. You couldn't be reached 24 hours a day. There were big chunks of time where you were just out and you came home when you were supposed to come home and no one knew where you were and whatever. And even, getting into being like 15, 16, sneaking out, like taking the bus to New York City to go to fucking punk shows at CB's and sleeping in the Port Authority in New York City, like in the 80s and the late 80s and, whatever. And it just seems like some of that is lost because people are connected more digitally than they are in real life. And that's the only thing like that I have, like, that's probably like my biggest concern is that like, I hope people don't lose a sense of adventure because, some of the shit you go through is like the shittiest times and later it becomes the funnest times where you have the fondest memories of like, yeah, dude, remember we slept in that fucking the Port Authority and they found a head in the fucking locker. You know what I mean? Like crazy shit like that. Like, you know what I mean? Sucked at the time, or like you're almost going to get rolled, but you only have $2 on you. So no one's going to fucking jump you anyway. But, just crazy shit like that, and it's just like, like I hope that doesn't ever get lost because that to me is a basic human thing, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and obviously some people will always have it, but just the way society is going as a whole, I hope it doesn't I don't know, squelch that for a significant number of people because it seems like it kind of is. And, they got everyone scared, like I just imagine, when we were kids, we'd ride our bikes to elementary school and, it was miles away. Like child services would be called now if you saw a kid, in fourth grade riding a bicycle around, it's just by themselves or with like a couple of friends. Like it just seems, the world's a lot different. Some things are way better. Some things are worse now. Like, and it's just, I hope that sense of like adventure and just getting out and being in the world doesn't get fucking lost. Like, cause I feel like a lot will get lost with that, I don't know. That's just.
I think your last statement, like, completely encapsulated that whole statement, which is that there are some things are better and some things are worse. We used to have charcoal fights, man. We would go and steal charcoal off of people's back decks.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood in the summer, and we would throw it at each other.
Yeah.
And that was totally normal. And the reason we did it was because you could tell if you got hit because if we used other stuff like pine cones.
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
You could argue, like, no, you didn't hit me. Well, if you get hit in the face with charcoal, I can tell. So we did that. We built bike ramps into the woods. There's no place to land. You just drove your bike as fast as you could. You went off a ramp and you went into the woods.
Yeah, and you weren't wearing like a padded jumpsuit when you did it either. No,
you weren't wearing it. You just wearing. We didn't know what that was.
Yeah. Or you'd get severely made fun of if you showed up with knee pads, elbow pads, and a helmet. People would be, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Yeah, like, where'd you even get something like that?
Yeah.
What is it like? What? But yeah, it's like, and to your point, going through things that are shitty brings people much closer together, and you can't do that on the internet.
Nope.
You can't. And again, there's that balance between, saying, in my day and then recognizing the fact that it is a different time. And that part of it sucks. Yeah. And that's why the Army experience is like, this isn't a plug for the Army in any way, shape, or form, because you don't have to be in the Army to do this. But like going through shitty things with your friends brings you exponentially closer, and it forms a bond that you can't replicate with anything else.
Absolutely.
Least of which, a Facebook chat group or whatever it is.
Yep.
Sleeping outside in the rain, being up for days at a time, like you never forget that. The things that I've gone through with, my brothers in the military and, my brothers in the scene, we'll never forget it. And it's brought us exponentially closer because it will always give us, no matter what disagreements we may have, that gives us a point of, resonance. That's somewhere we can always come back to. Like, we may disagree on whatever's going on politically or, socially or whatever, but remember that time we stayed out for like 3 days because we didn't have a place to sleep, and then like, remember that time we got in a fight and we got the shit beat out of us, and then we didn't have a place to sleep, so we had to figure out where we're gonna going through those sort of things can't be replicated by the internet. And I do think, to a large degree, that's something that the next generation is really going to have to figure out how to deal with. And it's not you or I that's going to have to figure out for them. It's them.
Yeah.
And I think time will really tell whether or not they're able to establish those relationships or whatever.
Yep.
but the scene was always great because like every show you went to, there was a story. There was stuff that went on.
There was a story just getting to the show half the time, or or the shenanigans in the parking lot afterwards, or whatever, you know. But yeah,
it always was. I remember going to a show in I can't remember what the show was. It was Orange 9mm in 1997. I don't know why we went to that show. But we saw Orange 9mm. I can't remember who else. And my buddy was like, "Hey, you want to go see the show?" And we live like 45 minutes away. And we went. And at the end of the show, he was like, "Dude, I don't even gas. We don't have a way to get home." Like, what? Why would you not bring that up at the beginning? I didn't have any money. So we had to panhandle for money to get gas to get back to where we were going.
Dude, I've been there, dude. I remember we were with our friend Spencer, and he had this big fucking car, you know, probably got 4 miles to the gallon. I remember we'd stop in parking lots and like comb the parking lot, just looking for change, like if we couldn't find anyone to kind of put money off of or whatever to get home, and just looking for change. We could put like 38 cents into the fucking tank and hopefully make it another half a mile.
Dude, if you got 97 cents back then, you're good. That's a gallon of gas.
Oh, yeah.
For me, that's like 4 miles. I can't remember when my son Courtney had, but it just, you know, being able to go through those experiences with your friends, and I think that's why the scene is so important, because I think it gives people a vehicle to interact with each other, which is now being profoundly tested by the COVID-19 situation, and people are trying to figure out how to maintain those relationships and everything else while, you know, going through this whole ordeal.
Sure.
But, you know, things like, you know, the Army, the military, or, you know, the scene, I draw a lot of parallels between the two, the same way I draw a lot of parallels between punk rock and hip hop.
Sure.
The Army, and, you know, when you tour with a band, you get to know them intimately. And you spend every waking moment with each other. So, and you have to learn how to either, you know, you become absolute brothers or it just doesn't work out. Can't do it.
Yep.
And fortunately, in my case, you know, every time that I travel with the guys in Noise, it just makes us closer. You know, we have our disagreements and whatever, but ultimately it's very much the same way that, you know, brothers and sisters fight.
Sure. You get 4 dudes in a van, like someone's going to aggravate something, or, you know, whatever, but you get through it, and it, you know, you laugh about it later.
Yeah. No, I love you to death, but you're pissing me off and you shut up.
Yeah.
You know, we disagree just like everybody else, but I'd say at the end of the day, you know, we never go away mad. And it's just been a remarkably positive experience, and everything that we've gone through has made ourselves closer. But, like, you know, what you're saying is entirely true. You can't, you know, we're friends on Facebook. Cool. That, you know, what do you know about that person?
Yeah. Yep.
Other than what they've liked and what they've made a laugh emoji from.
Yep.
And again, that's the balance, man. Is trying to impart to a kid, like, hey, you really haven't had the same experiences that I've had, and this is why. But you're still able to do it. You can get out there and, you know, wanderlust that you're talking about, going out and doing stuff. You know, working in a chopper shop and actually, like, doing something tangible rather than experiencing it online. You know, how do you help somebody that you care about, that's a young person that hasn't had that experience? Because if you start off with, you know, in my day, we panhandled for change outside the Kroger parking lot, hoping somebody would buy us beer so we could go on the show.
Yeah. No, you almost got to be like a salesman and be like, dude, you guys should do this. It would be the funnest thing you did, or something, you know, whatever, you know. And,
if you, I mean, just depends though. I mean, do you really care about perpetuating the experience of that younger generation so that they can keep that going? And I think in the interest of, or the context of the scene, that's very important.
Yeah.
Because we want this stuff to keep going, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's not gonna, if we can't impart to, you know, other kids that it's valuable and it's worth doing, and it's worth kind of being uncomfortable for a little bit for.
And at the same time, do your own thing with it. But here are like some core principles that this stuff is founded on, and it's important to keep that going. But obviously you're going to do your own thing with it as well. You know, like there's a lot of bands now, like, that will draw 2,000 kids to a show, and I don't even know who the fucking band is, and I'm just like, all right, and then like a fucking pioneer band will play, and you don't see any of those kids, but that is what it is. There's like different scenes, and it's still like a weird thing to wrestle with, that punk rock has like a fucking 40-year history at this point, versus when I was a kid, there was only, this is a point we've talked about a couple times on the show, that there was only like 4 or 5 years ahead of me, now there's like 40 fucking years of stuff. So if a kid gets into it now, there's punk rock that is literally fucking classic rock. You know what I mean? Or oldies to them, like a Sex Pistols record is like, when we were kids listening to fucking Elvis or something before that, you know what I mean? Like, and it's fucking insane to think that, and it's beautiful that it's still here and that it's emerged and changed and gone different ways. But it's cool that fundamentally it's still there, and there's still a calling and calling for it, and to me that's the biggest justification in what we did when we were kids. Like, it's like, hey, this is still here. If it wasn't needed, it wouldn't be. And that there's still a lot of people that are in it that from when we were kids, and like, if this wasn't important, dudes wouldn't still be doing it. When I say dudes, I just mean dudes and gals, but so that's something that I love about this stuff.
No, it's for every year that goes by. I mean, people are putting their own spin on this music, and they should.
Yeah.
But that's just created more and more avenues and more genres, and I think there's a propensity for people to really, for whatever reason, especially in the punk scene, they really need to categorize.
Yeah.
What kind of punk this is?
Yeah.
And if your assertion of what kind of punk this is different than your buddies, you're gonna argue about it.
Yeah.
And in an argument like that, everyone is wrong because it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Like my band, like we wrote music,
yeah,
right, and it came out how it came out, and we made a conscious decision very early on. Like, hey man, if this doesn't sound like traditional oi or whatever, we're just going to write it the way that we write it and put it out. And if people like it, cool. If they don't like it, cool. We're not trying to be like anything. I think to do the adverse would actually be trying to do something that you're not.
Yeah. You're just doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And if again, like, this is a song I wrote, I don't know what it sounds like, but I'm not going to not show it to the guys because it doesn't sound like a particular way that we're supposed to sound.
Yeah.
I actually think doing that is kind of adverse to the whole idea of punk rock, honestly, at its core.
Sure.
But there are all these different subgenres, and there are people that embrace that label, and there are people that don't. But I think ultimately, hardcore, especially, because like there's 20 different kinds of hardcore depending on who you talk to and what is hardcore, and who cares?
Yeah.
If you like it, you like it. In punk, oi, street punk, psychobilly, horror, like
there's a million,
all this stuff, because I think, categorically people really like to compartmentalize what it is they're listening to. And I almost think that it maybe gives them a talking point with their friends. Well, I'm into this music and this music and this music. And then they gauge whether or not that person knows what they're talking about based on that reaction. Like, okay, you're cool because this sub genre of punk rock. And
it only gets annoying. It only gets annoying when it gets so fucking micro fucking whatever, and it becomes elitist. Like, oh, I only listen to, blah, 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 D-beat from this fucking era in this region of the world, and I only listen to Swedish D-beat from 1994. And it's like, all right, dude, good for you, bud. I listen to all kinds of shit. That's why when you listen to the War Machine record, it's a fucking mess. It's all over the fucking place. It's like, what are you? Who knows, fucking? But it's shit we like, and that's for you guys too. Like, that's why you can have a 10-year recording career, because you're not pigeonholing yourself into one thing. Like, you can expand and kind of and play with things and do what you want with it. And I think people appreciate that.
There's just too much out there to, like you said, pigeonhole yourself into, because the greatest day of my life, man, was the day that I figured out that, I mean, it wasn't the greatest day of my life because I have 2 kids and a wife. So like fourth or fifth.
The greatest ray of your musical life.
Exactly. Is when I discovered that I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me and my musical taste in that context, right? I don't, I don't care what makes me like, if I like this band, I like this band. And the reward that I get from listening to that music and the resonance it has with me and what it has gotten me through, especially some of the things that I've been through. If music speaks to me and I enjoy it and it gets me through something hard, I don't give a shit if it now takes me outside of whatever lens you think encompasses punk or whatever. Like I don't care about that. It was pretty early on. But I was like, dude, if I listen to this band and you think it's lame or you think it's poser music or whatever, because that was a big thing when I was a kid, I don't really care, man. Like I would rather be able to explore different avenues of music and get all of that reward and all of the benefits that listening to different kinds of music get me than for you to think that I'm cool. Because I'm probably not going to talk to you next year. Yeah. So why am I trying to be something that I'm not? And that's the real, hypocrisy of that line of thinking.
And
you're intentionally. Go ahead.
No. I just meant too. It's like no one got into punk rock because it was cool. I mean, maybe now, but when we were young, like you didn't get into it because it was fucking cool. Like, you know what I mean? And that was the point.
No, and to divide such a small group of people that that were held together by this music, like this all means so much to us. So we have this common bond. Like back, when I was a kid, if somebody listened to punk, they listened to punk. That was my friend because they listened to punk rock. They listened to things that was so rare.
Yeah.
So like, hey, we have this bond now.
Yep.
I can't even imagine that person being like, well, hang on, what kind of punk do you listen to? Do you listen to this band and this band and this band? Because if not, we can't be friends.
No.
Okay, cool, man. Like that's unfathomable. But like, now because of the advent of the internet, which is amazing because you have all these bands that you can listen to. That, like, can you imagine? Like when we were kids, being like, hey, have you ever heard of this band? Here they are. You can listen to them right now.
Yeah,
you can download all their music.
Yeah, you don't have to hunt down a 7-inch.
And if you like this band, it's comparable to like when we were kids. And I used to go to Criminal Records in Atlanta. We would get the compilations.
Yeah.
And look at the who the artists were and which songs we liked, and that would be the basis for what we bought.
Yep.
And sometimes it was a horrible decision. But can you imagine being able to be like, well, wait, let me see if I really like this band.
Yeah, we used to do that with the thanks list now. You know what I mean? Who do they think? All right, look for those bands. But now the beauty of the internet is like if you go on Spotify and there's an artist you like, they go, hey, you might like this too, and pretty regularly I find new shit that I actually like because of that, because it's got suggested to me, and I'm like, well, fuck yeah. I mean, some of these algorithms, are a little creepy, but hey, in that aspect, I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? That works, but
No, it's an interesting animal, especially the algorithms. Like, when I text Choke about some Nikes that I'm thinking about buying because I know he really likes them, and then my Facebook feed is filled with similar Nike shoes. That's kind of weird. But
or if you talk to somebody about, so I bet right now we both have Nike fucking ads in our Instagram feeds or somewhere right now because you just said it out loud.
Yeah, it's really weird, but like the point of all of that is the fact that like I think that younger people they've always had that. They've grown up in a world where they have instant gratification and instant information, and I want to hear a band, so I'm going to listen to them right now.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think it takes away some of the context and perspective that we have, where it's like it didn't always used to be that way, man. You had to really work to get to a show and see a band. Get a record because we didn't have any money, so you had to you go to a show, you got to figure out, do you want a shirt or do you want a record?
Yep.
Or you're not going to get either.
Yeah, and I firmly believe that you appreciate shit you worked for more than things that were just given to you. You're more apt to take things that were just given to you for granted, and that can be in any capacity. I get worried about like if this is like the stuff that we feel is lost with them. What's going to be the shit that they look at when they have grandkids or kids and be like, man, when we were in 2020, when we were kids, we had to do this, and now you guys just got that. Like, what's the next shit going to be? That's like we're going to be like so fucking out of touch with.
Password.
Yeah, dude. Like it's just going to be all brain implants and shit, and you don't even got to go anywywhere. You just think about it all.
I had to, I used to have a phone that I had to look at.
Yeah.
See shit.
Yeah,
and that again, that's why it's really. There's a reason that we teach history, right? And it doesn't resonate with everybody. A lot of people think it's boring as shit. I've always been a huge history fan. My father was the same way. But there's a reason that we teach it, and not just because we kind of have an understanding of like our country, but we understand where we came from in the context of like what these people went through. If you're looking at history, I think correctly. I think there's a perspective where it's like, yeah, man, maybe what we're going through isn't so bad.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example, the COVID-19 deal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that the scene is very much the same way. I think it's important to, again, impart to these kids, like, hey, this is how it used to be. You don't have to be that way, but it's important for you to understand because it gives you a little bit of a perspective of like how easy it is for you to do what it is that you're doing. You don't have to drive or figure out how to get 45 minutes away to a record store and then thumb through stuff and figure out what you can afford and then look at the back and see if maybe one of those bands is better than the one that you're picking up because you only have enough money to get one thing. And now there's 4 records potentially that you want. You don't have to worry about that. Now I can just listen to all 4 of them on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, and I'm good.
Yep.
But again, I think the real question is how do you convey that? Like, how do you articulate it so that what it is that we've experienced doesn't kind of, go away when we go away?
Yep. Yeah, man, that's important shit, dude. And that's heavy shit. And it's nothing to be taken lightly. It's something that people really got to think about, because what we leave now is, that's what's going to be, that's what people are going to reference in the future, and so it's important to be cognizant of what you're doing and the imprint that you're leaving,
Yeah, without question.
Hey, just a quick question, like not to, being someone that was into punk or is into punk rock and stuff, and then there's also a career in the military. Has that ever been at odds with each other? And do you get shit from that from like anybody? Like, oh, I can see for some reason I can see, especially like, I don't know, I'm not calling out Europeans and stuff, but I can see for some reason, like some Europeans be like, how can you be in a punk band when you're in the soldier in the oppressive imperial army or whatever, just fucking.
That is exactly what has happened on multiple occasions. I've been called an imperialist bullet sponge. I've been called, I can't. Somebody called me a baby killer, which I thought was pretty retro.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can definitely see from the outside looking in, if you have no cognizance of, especially if your perspective is super limited, how you could think that I'm just part of this like, imperialist machine and I'm part of the system. And, dude, you work at Burger King. Tell me how you're not part of the corporate machine.
Yep.
But, jokes aside. So I joined the Army because it was a personal choice that I made because I wanted to better myself. I didn't do it in the context of like, now I'm going to support the global government machine and be part of I didn't, that wasn't even ever something that crossed my mind. I love this country very much. I love the people in it. And I come from a military family. When I joined and when I started to serve, I understood that the reason that we continue to serve is because we love the people to our left and our right. We love the people that we serve with, and we want to keep them safe. We want to keep them protected. And no matter what the government is doing, we still have an obligation to the people that we serve with. We still have an obligation to put food on our families' tables. So that's why we do it. Being a soldier doesn't mean that you automatically agree with everything that the government does. We're allowed to have our own thoughts and our own opinions. That's a very common misconception. And it's very easy to like kind of make that into some sort of like cartoonish parody. Like, you know, you're in a punk band, but you're in the Army, and how can you do both? I would argue, how can you be in a punk band and have worked at McDonald's before?
Yeah. A Walmart or whatever corporate machine.
Yeah. If we're judging things like, you know, if, I did a podcast with the Hard Times guys, and they made a very good point. Like if you live someplace and they start building a high rise across the street from you, which actually happened to us in Tacoma, and it blocks your view, and it, you know, just completely, you know, there's just people coming and going all the time, and it's inconvenient for you, and you don't like it. You don't blame the construction worker. You know, the construction worker is responsible for being like, you know what, this is what we're going to do. Construction workers saying, this is my job, this is my obligation. Vocationally, I'm going to do what I have to do.
Yeah. I'm just here to lay brick.
It may not. Yeah, man, it's not maybe not be congruent, you know, with what you think should happen. But you know, I've gotten a lot of shit for it, especially in Europe, Greece, and sadly, like even in our hometown, you know, there's some people that really don't like my band because of what I did, and I've had that conversation with my band before, like, you know, because I felt obligated to apologize because the band was getting shit for a choice that I made when I was a kid. And, you know, their response was, you know, pretty expected, which was just, don't ever apologize for that.
Yeah, no.
You know, you don't apologize for who you are or what you do ever. You know, we knew going into this what you did. And, you know, of course, they're trying to express things. I think that's the real challenge, is trying to express things about society and what's going on in our country and everything else, while maintaining professional bearing and not going outside the boundaries of what I'm permitted to do publicly. Because I speak for me, I don't speak for United States soldier when I sing for Noise, but I make it a point for a couple of reasons to maintain objectivity. One, because I don't want to be a whiny band that tells you everything I think is wrong and what you should think. And if you don't think the same way I do, you're wrong. That's why I hate Anti-Flag. I try and, hey, here's what's going on. Here's how I see it. This isn't a position one way or the other. This is just kind of what's going on. What do you guys think about
You're just reporting on what you see or talking about or analyzing what you see. You're not forcing like, and if you don't think this way, you're wrong or you're this or that. I get it. I feel like I've always resonated more with bands that are like that versus someone who's like preachy and you know, in between the songs they're going to chastise people for not agreeing with them or thinking with it. Dude, like that's the opposite of fucking punk rock. And just before I forget this, like, you know, people have that perspective like, why are you doing this? Like, I feel like if there needs to be soldiers, I want more punk rock kids or hardcore kids or people that can think for themselves to be in that position. I hope you get to a position of power and prominence in the military so that you can help guide and direct things the right way. I feel the same way about cops. If there's got to be fucking cops, I'd rather have like a punk rock motherfucker that thinks for himself and is going to be cool and is not going to just be a robot to the state. And I want that kind of person in that position because, you know, like to change things from the inside or you know, that's a very simplistic view, but I'd rather, you know, have that kind of person being in one of those positions than just some fucking tool for the state or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's just a way of thinking of it to me, you know?
No, you make a great point. And, you know, there's a misnomer with the Army, you know, they want robots. No, man, we don't. We want critical thinkers.
Yeah.
We want people that are able to you know, exude a bearing and problem solving and be able to do what it is that they do. And I think it's really funny. Like we talk about how the media you know, isn't portraying the truth. So somebody that's, you know, subscribing to some sort of inane conspiracy theory, right, and has never even been close to any sort of military existence or, you know, anything of that nature. But they're going to tell me that here's what soldiers represent and here's what they do.
Yeah.
And that's happened on a few instances. Well, dude, don't you think don't you think it's weird that you're perfectly willing to accept a conspiracy theory from YouTube, but at the same time, you've decided that the image that has been portrayed or that you perceive of people that are in the military, it's accurate. It's been portrayed accurately, because that's the one that one is accurate. But, you know, 9/11 was an inside job. You know, vaccines turn you into a robot. Like, I just think there's a substantial amount of hypocrisy that exists with people in a lot of instances, and I understand why. You know, they don't understand our existence or what it is that we represent or whatever. But honestly, man, I'm a working class dude that, you know, I take care of soldiers and I take care of my family. That's my job.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a wheel in the corporate machine or whatever.
The military industrial complex.
Yeah, you know, it's such a ridiculous assertion anyway, because the Army is the most socioeconomic, you know, ethnically diverse organization on the planet. You will not find a more diverse organization. I mean, people from all walks of life, every ethnicity, you know, country, religious background, geographic background, economic background, everybody is represented in the Army. So to assert that, like, you guys all, you know, think the same, you all vote the same, you all, you know, it's one of the most incredibly naive assertions that you could possibly put forth, because we come from all walks of life. We represent everyone.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's very simplistic to try and sum us up based on a, you know, R. Lee Ermey movie that you saw 15 years ago. And obviously he was a Marine, but, you know, I'm just making a point.
Sure.
It's kind of the antithesis of what punk rock is about, really, if you're going to go there, which is critical thinking. So maybe the image and the perspective that you have been given isn't necessarily in line with what the reality is.
Sure.
And I think that's true across the board.
Well, I think one thing, and this is just one subset of a bigger problem, is that there's not a reliable media source anymore in the States. Like, like that every media is I don't know, that they're, and I'm not getting into a conspiracy here, but it's corporate owned, or like they all have their own slant now. Whereas, like, you know, I don't listen to the news anymore because the news is always tainted with whatever kind of political leaning that station has, you know, so you can't go to Fox for 100% reliable just news without like a political commentary on it. And you can't go to CNN or MSNBC for that either, because they all have their own slant and leaning on it, and they're not just reporting the facts anymore. So I think it gets a lot of people disenchanted, and they start looking for other things, and then they're weeding through like the thousands of fucking crazy fucking videos on YouTube and stuff, and then people get confused and lost and all that shit. And I've been that way too. I've gone down a bunch of like conspiracy wormholes before, never anything specific about soldiers or anything, but just all kinds of shit. And then you just got to pull back from shit and look at things more objectively. I wish that more than anything, I wish that America had at least one objective, unbiased, like mainstream media news source. There's, you know, there are unbiased and good news sources, but you know, they don't reach everybody like, you know, like the mainstream news sources, and you know, people get a lot of misinformation, and just this COVID thing is one example of it. Like, there's every day you hear Surgeon General saying this, but this guy's saying this, like, you know what I mean? And this guy's saying this, you know, and it's like, well, what do I believe? And then these statistics are padded and these statistics are saying that, and we, you know, it's just insanity, you know, and it's, you know, there's a lot of information that people get fast. So people get information overload, and and they're not sitting and trying to analyze things. They're just digesting headlines and not reading like the whole article or getting nuanced information. They're just reacting based on a headline. And those are some big problems I think the country's facing right now that are beyond me to change, but it's something that as a whole we got to start thinking about, I think, and trying to figure out ways to overcome that stuff, because that's doing more of a disservice than anything.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I've had this conversation with lots of friends. Critical thinking is entirely reliant on looking at facts, right? And assessing facts and trying to be able to discern exactly where the nature of a problem lies, because the only way you can solve a problem is to really effectively see whether or not you're treating the problem or you're treating a symptom of the problem. But in order to do that, you have to be given the facts in order to make that conclusion.
Yep. And
we don't have that luxury anymore. We have to look at media and then calculate, okay, well, this is a left-leaning media, this is a right-leaning media, so what is their narrative based off of, and what do they have to stand from spinning a certain story this way? And now I have to do some math, and if I watch Fox, now I have to watch CNN to kind of see what their spin is.
Yeah.
I could divide by 2 and do some sort of crazy math.
Sure. Or where's the overlap? Yeah.
Right. And we shouldn't have to do that.
Especially in this day and age where most middle-class families, you got 2 parents both working, and sometimes both working 2 jobs. They don't get the time to do that anymore.
No. So we're supposed to be informed citizens, I would say, because we're supposed to vote for our representation, correct? So
exactly.
If we're going to do that, we have to be given the baseline understanding of where people stand and where they fit into. And now it's become so narrative-driven and polarized that, like, COVID-19 is a perfect example. You got the right's narrative, you got the left's narrative. So me, and this is my personal opinion on COVID, I look at what the doctors and the scientists are saying, and I try and determine, okay, what do they have to gain from spinning an agenda where everybody stays home, right? And I at this point, can't really conclude what it is that they have to gain unless I subscribe to really outlandish theories. But as far as conspiracy theories are concerned, I get it. I get why people subscribe to those, because uncertainty is terrifying, especially in an age of information where, you want to know what Thomas Jefferson's second kid's name was? Google it. You're good, right? But COVID-19, it's terrifying to people because, first of all, it's killing a lot of people. And at the same time, we don't really know very much about it or really what the impact is going to be long term when we get to go back to work. Our mutual friend, Johnny's got a barbershop. He wants to go back to work,
sure,
but he's scared to go back to work because
he can't. Shit's still closed down. Shit's still closed down.
So it's scary. And we have a need to know the facts, right? And I'm no different. I want to know, when my wife was pregnant, when's this baby going to be born? What time?
Yeah.
And, the doctor's saying, we don't have any idea. Maybe around this time. No, man. I need a time.
Yeah.
Within 30 minutes, tell me when kid's going to be born. We need that. We need that. It makes us feel better. It makes us feel, relieved and relaxed to know kind of where things are. And right now, that is not the case. So conspiracy theories, I think, kind of provide people with an avenue to I know something, and I also know something that you don't know, which is also hugely satisfying to humans, because we love being the bearers of bad news. And if you don't, all it takes is to scroll down social media to, this has been debunked, right? Or, people love doing that, or they love, doing the other side of the coin. Which is,
no matter what it is. Yeah. Well, and
we love to know shit that other people don't know.
On both sides of the coin.
So conspiracy theories give us an avenue or a vehicle to both satisfy our need for quantification of facts and how things are. And we get to know something that, Ricky next door doesn't know. So we can be like, hey, X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
Because we love saying that. But like, as far as the media is concerned, you're absolutely correct. And we've written a bunch of songs about that.
Yeah.
Rank and File. I wrote that, long time ago. But it was essentially about, you get so ingrained in your own position, and then the media outlet that you subscribe to, whether you're right or left, they spin it so much that eventually you don't even remember
what your position
you were supposed to be for in the first fucking place.
Yep.
Like, wait, what do I thought we were for this. We're not. Like, and I think COVID-19 is a perfect example.
Yeah.
There's a side that definitively said this is a liberal hoax. It's not a real disease. It's a flu. And it started killing tens of thousands of people. And then magically, like, well, it is a disease, but it's just.
Yeah.
I think this has really illustrated how polarized we are as a society, where even something this horrible, we can't be like, hey, you know what? Why don't we try and work together?
Exactly.
And make this better?
Yeah.
Because what we typically do as Americans, even though we argue tooth and nail all the time about everything, if something really bad happens, when 9/11 happened, we pulled our shit together.
Yep.
And we acted in unison as a country and said, hey, we don't disagree. We disagree on everything. But right now we need to work together because things are bad.
I think
it seems like that would be one of those times.
Yeah, it should be, but I think the problem is that the things have become too politicized, and both sides are just playing games, and it's like the public that is going to be is the ones that are getting hurt with it, and there's no real, no one knew what this was and how bad it would be or how not bad it would be, and it just seems like it's being politicized on both sides of the spectrum, and everyone's concerned more with fighting than to figuring out what the best way to fucking do things is. And it also shows some of the gross incompetence, especially of like local state governments in dealing with stuff, because it's a fucking mess no matter what. And I hope that if anything, we're lucky that it isn't as bad as it was supposed to be. And I hope that, a lot of these systems learn lessons on how to be more better. More better sounds so ridiculous, but how to be better prepared in case there is something serious that comes along the line. Because if this was like Ebola or some fucking real serious shit, we would have been fucked as a country, and the world would have, like, not just us, but
when this first came out, when COVID first became when we first became cognizant of it, my first thing was like, well, it sounds kind of like the flu, similar death rate and everything else. And as it escalated, it really illustrated some of the, absolutely right, the inadequacies that we had in certain portions of government. But in fairness, nobody is equipped to deal with a pandemic because we haven't had to do it in 100 years. But at the same time, thank God this wasn't like a hemorrhagic fever or, plague, which still pops up every once in a while.
Yeah.
Whose, mortality rate is just infinitely higher. So I think it's really given us a very staunch, like, measuring stick as to how we're equipped to deal with something like this. Because again, in fairness, who would have thought? Who would have thought that we were dealing with something like this 6 months ago? Nobody.
4 months ago, dude.
Yeah. So now we're really, just like any kind of pandemic or catastrophe or anything, I think leadership, this is when it's tested.
Yeah.
You either rise to the occasion and you're able to adequately deal with this as best as you can, because you have to make allowances for the fact that, like, again, this is a pandemic. This is unprecedented. It's can't expect somebody to be like, yep, got this under control. We're good to go.
Yeah.
I knew this was coming. Everything's cool. You didn't. Like, so being able to, like, pragmatically deal with something while trying to deal with the residual effects of the pandemic, like, it's a super hardcore challenge, but there are places that are dealing with it well and in places that aren't. But I think that's true with like anything.
Sure.
But yeah, man, I think the fact that it's been so politicized and so polarized that now, it's just like gun control, dude. As soon as somebody says a word, it triggers one side or the other, and then they go into their fighting position, and they're not going to hear anything you say. Yeah. Now you've exposed yourself. We wrote a song called Mass Apathy after Parkland, and I got attacked by NRA people. It wasn't an anti-gun song. And when I wrote it, I was like, you know what? Both sides of this argument are going to get pissed about this song because they're going to mistake it for the other side's point of view. And I was absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The song is about our inability to have a conversation as a country about how we deal with a problem because we've become so ingrained in our position that as soon as I say, hey, it sucks when kids get killed at school, there's going to be some gun dude that's like, what? Second Amendment. But at the same time, I say, I don't want all guns banned. Somebody on the other side is going to chime in.
But I think that goes back to what we were saying with the media being so polarized that people are only digesting headlines, and so they're reactive based on that. You know what I mean? Like, and people can't handle nuance anymore, or like a conversation about something. It's just more like, nope. Like you said, like no guns or no restrictions, and it's just like, because that's what they're fed all day for news or whatever, and it's like, we got to get back to being able to talk about shit, man.
I wonder how much social media really exacerbates that, because now I don't have to hang out with people that have different viewpoints than me.
Exactly.
I do, because I'm in the Army.
Yeah.
But if you're, the majority of your time is spent on social media, you're a civilian that can kind of really control who you have interaction with, it's really easy to get ingrained. Like, I don't need to deal with you because you feel like, different.
You can have
I've never had that luxury.
You can have your
really
whole
thankful.
Yeah. You can have your own little virtual isolated world of like-minded thinkers, and you don't have to talk to anybody else.
There are people who are 100% quantifiably opposed to almost everything that I think politically, who are friends of mine, and I'd take a bullet for.
Yep.
And that's kind of how it's supposed to be.
Sure.
We're not supposed to measure our ability to care about people based on whether they think exactly like we do. And I think if you're really going to talk about yourself as like a true American and everything else, then you really have to accept that you're supposed to have friends that don't agree with what you think. That's our country was categorically founded on that.
Yeah.
With that, we don't agree with each other, but here are the things that we can agree. We can focus on the things that make us alike rather than the things that make us dissimilar.
Yeah. And what makes us dissimilar doesn't matter unless it's infringing somehow on me, or you, and
exactly.
And then if otherwise, go do your thing. Just, don't involve me if I'm not into it,
No, I have friends and relatives who I'm, friends with on social media, and I'll see one of their posts. I will roll my eyes and keep on scrolling.
Keep going. Yep. You don't need to make a comment on it.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah. I
don't have to make that a platform to, this is the hill I'm going to die on. You're going to change your mind, or we're not going to be friends anymore.
Yeah. No.
It's not worth it.
No.
It really isn't. There are a couple of things that I will not absolutely tolerate. Racism, 100%. Post something racist, homophobic, whatever. No, I'm not going to tolerate that. But if you like a senator or a congressman or a policy or whatever that I don't agree with, who cares?
Yeah.
Right. If you're a good friend of mine, maybe we can talk about it over a beer. But I'm not going to use Facebook as my hill to die on. Now, I have been guilty of it in the past.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, somebody will post something that's inflammatory, and I bite.
Yeah.
So I am a human being.
No,
However,
no, yeah.
in general practice, for public service, every time I've done that, it has pissed me off even more.
Sure.
So it's not worth it.
And then and then afterwards you get upset. Then you get upset with yourself for even engaging, and then it's like there's no winning.
And then I'm pissed off. And my daughter's trying to play with me, and I'm thinking about some asshole that I've never seen before in my entire life, and something he said, like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
So like, it's just not worth it. It's not worth engaging, and there's not going to be anybody on Facebook that's like, you know what? I was a conservative, but when you posted that meme, I realized that I shouldn't be a conservative anymore.
Yeah. Or like, vice versa. Yeah.
Exactly. I was super liberal, but you posted that anti-Biden meme, and I'm on your team. We're good. Nobody like.
No, I hear you, man. We got to do another one of these where we can do it in person too, because it's an in-person conversation is always so much better. But we're coming.
Man, I agree.
We're coming up at the 2-hour mark here, homie, and that's a good one for a phone call, man. Let me before we can before we can wrap up, is what's coming up, man. What can people look out for Noise? I know you got some new music coming and some collaborations in the clothing world. You're in the designer echelon here now, and what's happening with Noise, man?
Yes, I am 100% a fashion designer and dressed accordingly. We have a couple of singles coming out. They've already been pressed. They're coming out on Pirates Press. They've just done a phenomenal job. One's called Lost. The other is called Price We Pay. One is about kind of the current political climate and kind of where we've gone as a country, and the other is about the private prison system.
The worst. I can't even start that conversation. That's one we'll save for more in person. Privatization of prisons is one of the worst ideas in the history of this fucking country, and that needs to stop fucking now, dude.
Yep, that's why I wrote it, brother. So not only that, but just the manner with which people get railroaded into, again, that whole like perspective of, well, do the crime, you do the time. Well, what if you get charged with the crime and you actually do it, but you can't afford to post bail, so you have to stay in jail until your hearing, but in doing so, you're going to get fired. There's nobody to watch your kids. Now you have to plea out. Now you're a convicted felon, but you actually didn't do anything.
Yep.
I felt like that needed to be addressed.
Sure.
So we did a song about it. Pirates Press released those two singles. We're doing an acoustic record that we've already recorded that'll come out eventually.
As Noise, not your side thing.
As Noise, yeah.
Okay.
As Noise. They're all Noise songs. And then we did a collaboration with our buddies at Omerta. There's two shirts that our buddy Dan Smith did. Phenomenal artist. Really encourage, people to check it out. Not for our shit, but just for what Omerta is going on. Same thing with Pirates Press. Like, again, things are really tough for a lot of different people. So I think it's kind of obnoxious to plug anything that, we have going on as far as people purchasing it. But I'm sure it'll be on Spotify. I'm sure it'll be on YouTube. If you have the means, we'd love for you to support the records. But if not, just listen to music, because we'd like people to hear how we feel about those things. But again, shit's tough, man. So if you don't have the means, please don't feel obligated to do anything.
Sure.
Take care of yourself. Take care of the local businesses in your area, honestly.
And where can people find more information? What's like the social media or the website for you guys?
So we got the Facebook thing going on, and then my Instagram. We don't have the band Instagram. It's more mine, but anything that happens, we tend to put it out on my Instagram, which is Noise with a 7 instead of the exclamation point, because I'm really clever, but mostly because Instagram won't let you have an exclamation point. And then Pirates Press, just Google Pirates Press Records. They have all kinds of awesome stuff going on. And then Omerta, same thing, omertamia.com.
And they're one of
those are all the
Mick. And didn't you guys did a record for Mick, right? Didn't you guys?
We did our very, very first record Mick put out. Walk Beside Us was
Yeah.
a collab between a few different labels. But yeah, Mick's been a buddy for over a decade, and for Nate even longer. But we did when I was in Afghanistan, we actually coordinated and put out a compilation, Front Lines of American Street Punk, which was a double LP with just a whole bunch of American Oi and street punk bands. But that was a charity record that we did for wounded vets. But Mick's always been a good buddy. So anything he's done, I've been 100% behind, whether it's Instapress or America. Always got his back.
Absolutely.
Amazing person.
Yeah, him and Big C are two really tight friends and people I call brothers. And Mick's been had a lot of things with Dirty Mick Records. He had a record store in L.A. and he's a veteran as well and served and
absolutely.
And Omerta, I can't say enough. It's like one of the most legit streetwear brands out there, like run by two of the most legit dudes I know. And it's not some Johnny come latelys that are latching on to a scene or something and trying to get in. Like these dudes live and breathe this shit. So omertamia.com, man, make sure you represent, and they got a ton of cool shit, man. Ton of cool shit. They're one of the kind of sponsors for us here on the podcast too. So there we got that one out. I definitely want to thank you for calling in and doing this today, man. I know you're trying to fight off your kid from having some chocolate cake, and you got some domestic stuff over there, and taking time to do this is much appreciated. We'll do another one down the road, man, where we can be in the same place at the same time, and because it's only been a few times in life where we've probably been in the same place, the same time. But we'll make sure we get to do one of these live, because this was awesome, and I know doing it face to face would be even better. So again,
man, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to hear the new shit. And go check out Noise, man. They got a 10-year catalog, so there's a lot of music that you can listen to. And if you're out of work, you got plenty of time right now. And if you're back to work, you got plenty of time when you're commuting to give it a listen, man. Good stuff.
Thanks so much, brother. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I had to take a quick pause. I didn't edit anything out or anything. I just had to make a quick pause, and now I'm back. I just got to read a couple of things here. Again, I want to thank my friends in the Rumblers for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. I also got to give a big shout out to Chop Cult. They are one of the sponsors of the podcast as well. And if you don't know Chop Cult, well, you should by now, especially after 16 episodes of this podcast. They are the biggest news and social network and resource dedicated to motorcycle riders and chopper builders. Check them out at chopcult.com. They got weekly features. They send out an email kind of newsletter. They got a blog dump. They have classifieds where you can buy, sell, trade, barter parts and bikes and whatever, and a huge active online forum, one of the largest and most active online motorcycle related forums there is. Membership is free. You just sign up at chopcult.com. You can also find them on all the main social medias, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Pinterest, all that stuff. Simply at Chopcult, CHOPCULT. And I also got to give a shout out to Omerta. We already me and Matt talked about them a little bit earlier. They are a streetwear brand and good friends of mine. You can check them out at omertamia.com, OMERTAMIA. Also on Instagram at omertamia. It's a clothing line, streetwear brand. They got fucking everything: socks, t-shirts, outerwear, which means jackets and shit like that. Men's and women's, a lot of their shit's made on good quality American-made apparel. It's these dudes live and breathe it. It's real deal dudes with a real deal company. It's not some dudes that just flew into this world and making money off it. These dudes live and breathe it. And when you buy something from Omerta, you can, at the checkout, where you enter promo codes when you're emptying your cart there and going to pay, use the code Big Truth and you will get 20% off your order. Come on now, that's a fucking deal, dude. And on past podcasts, you've heard me do the math. This time I don't get to do the math, but I will actually do it real quick. If you buy $100 worth of stuff, it'll only be $80. You get $20 to do whatever else you want with. Buy more stuff with it, and then get another 20% off that, man. It's like a fucking never-ending cycle of saving money. Now, with that said, along the same lines, I want to give a shout out to my boy Warren and his company Pitchfork. If you don't know Pitchfork, dude, check him out. Pitchfork, New York, dude. It's a clothing company. He's got a record label. He does all kinds of awesome. He does this whole 7-inch collection where he does one band from the West Coast, one band from the East Coast, one on each side of the 7-inch. They do all kinds of limited vinyls. Yeah, check him out, www.pitchforkny.com. You know what that stands for, Pitchfork, New York. Pitchforkny.com. And you will find all kinds of fucking merchandise and all kinds of cool shit. So just go there and check it out and support. Also, obviously, if you are in the given mood, go check out chopahead.com, my motorcycle shop. We're a full service shop. You know, anything from oil changes to a full custom chopper build or audio for your bagger, speed work for your motor, fucking anything you need to do, we'll do it. www.chopahead.com or give us a call at the shop, 508-995-6764. We also do online ordering. We do parts, sales, anything you need, dude. Like we're in this 100%. We have a clothing line, we have apparel, we have our own line of gloves that are all U.S. made, 100% deerskin leather, and the palms and under the fingers are all lined with Kevlar. So it's our Defender Series gloves. It's good for you motorcycle riders. It's good for bouncers, good for people in security. You know what I mean? It's it's just good stuff to have. Good to have Kevlar in your palms. Or pick up a t-shirt or hat, something, help keep the podcast going. You can also go to www.bigtruth.com. Bigtruthpodcast.com. Again, www.bigtruthpodcast.com. And just check out all the episodes. You can also, there's a place where you can support if you feel like donating. And as of now, we are still planning to do the Full Speed Ahead show in August, as long as the venue allows it. We have the date. It's just more about whether things will be opened up by then, but check that out, fullspeedaheadshow.com or Instagram at fullspeedaheadshow. Also, the Chopahead Instagram is just at Chopahead, CHOPPAHEAD. Once again, I'm signing off. I want to thank you for listening. Take care of yourself, stay safe, be smart, have fun, fuck shit up. Thank you.